Hey, happy Friday, everyone. Ricky Hurtado here with LatinxEd. Apologies for getting this live stream started a little later than usual for our cafecitos here with our LatinxEd fellows, but we're having some technical difficulties with Facebook. Y'all know how that goes. Very excited to be a part of this conversation today, where we're talking about Nuestros Sueños, or post-secondary options and opportunities for Latinx students across North Carolina. This is a very welcome conversation for me because it's very much our bread and butter as we think about how we translate our dreams into action and make sure our students are moving from high school to college and then to career and to be the leaders of North Carolina across every community in our state. I'm really excited to be joined here with two incredible leaders in the field of education here, Juana and Flor, who will share with us a little bit about their work as well as their perspective on this critical topic as we think about the future of our communities and the state as a whole. So welcome to the cafecito, y'all. Really excited to be having this conversation. Flor, do you want to get us started here with an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your roots, your background, your education history, really pertinent to this conversation, as well as what you're up to now.
Yeah. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you for having me. My name's Flor Herrera-Picasso. I'm born and raised in Wilson, North Carolina, but my parents are from Guanajuato, Mexico. And a little tidbit I'd like to share is that my mom was actually 4 months pregnant with me when she crossed the border. So I think it's very inspiring that she did that, given the situation she was in. But so I have a bachelor's in business. I have a master's in textile and apparel design, and both of them are from NC State. And some of my fondest memories of college are my study abroads. I studied abroad in China for a summer, and I studied abroad in Curitiba, Brazil for a semester. And I think that that was one of my best experiences and the best decision I've ever made was to study abroad. And some tidbits, fun facts about me. I'm the oldest of 10 siblings. I have 3 younger sisters and 6 younger brothers. So that you can already imagine that was a whole handful growing up as the oldest of 10. But when I was growing up, I wanted to either be a singer, an actress, or a fashion designer because of the movie Selena. So that's how much she impacted me. But I went on to be a fashion designer. I was living in New York City for 4 years and working in the fashion industry. And so it's something that kind of marked me was that throughout my master's program, based on my sketches and my designs, my professors kind of made me feel like I was okay, but I wasn't like a prodigy or talented or, worthy of making it, I guess. But I continued, I pushed on, and I did fulfill my dreams by moving to the city and working in luxury brands, Naeem Khan and Pamela Roland. But I always had that sense of inadequacy or that imposter syndrome. Like I knew I was competing with people from Parsons, from people from FIT and students from Paris that did fashion school their whole, careers. So that inadequacy, I carry it now, but I always tell myself that my education and expertise does not equivocate my passion. And so, yes, I pushed through and I was there in the city and I worked on dresses that were worn by like Kelly Rowland and Chrissy Teigen. So in the end, I must have been not that bad after all, if, I made it and into where I wanted to be. So, yeah, here I am now, completely 180. I'm back in Wilson, my hometown, and I'm starting a nonprofit called Casa Azul de Wilson. And with Casa Azul de Wilson, we seek to help the Latino youth of Wilson apply to college and make their experience a little bit easier than it was for us, and also to create cultural space for us to celebrate our identities.
No, I love your story. Thanks so much for sharing that, Flor. I learn something new about you every time we talk. But I did know about your sort of fashion design sort of journey from our conversations, but also every once in a while on your Instagram, a new famous person just randomly pops up and I'm like, Flor, like what did you do in your past life? So it's really cool to hear. And I'm sure you have a ton of stories. And regardless of what professors or faculty said, I know you're an inspiration to so many youth here who see your journey as a journey that they can aspire to, with your not just beautiful designs, but also just your story as well. So thanks so much for all the work that you're doing in Wilson. Juana, I want to get you in the mix here. Want to hear a little bit about you as well, your roots, and what you're up to now with CFNC and the rest of your life as well.
Of course. And thank you so much for having us, Ricky, and for the space for us to share our stories, and just talk a little bit about ourselves. So I am originally from Mexico. It's a very small pueblo in Mexico, el Estado de Mexico, Amadores Palmar Chico. I came to the United States when I was 4 years old. I am the youngest of 8 siblings. And so my dad came to the United States, and when he found out about the Amnesty Act that was going to pass and stuff, he just like hurried up and got all of us over. But yeah, I've been here in the United States since the age of 4, living in Raleigh all my life. And so, as I mentioned, I'm the youngest of 8 siblings. I am the first in my immediate and extended family who attended and graduated from a 4-year institution. I will say that because we're talking about post-secondary education, I want to definitely talk about my journey towards college and high school. And I want to say that my college journey was somewhat like unexpected. And the reason I say that is because nobody really spoke to me about college. It was never spoken we never talked about it in our home. My mom has a 2nd grade education. My dad has a 6th grade education. And so they never really understood the educational system here in the United States. And so they really didn't know how to support me in that aspect. And so higher education was really never spoken about in our household. And it was never really talked about in school. So like I never had any conversations with my school counselors, my teachers about college. And so really what happened and what kind of took me towards that journey was it was my senior year, and an organization came to our school, an organization that a lot of us are familiar with, El Pueblo. They came to our school, and I remember meeting Mike Figueras, who had a significant influence in my life. And now it's so cool that I get to work with him as a professional. But he came to our school with some other individuals from El Pueblo, and they talked to us about college. And so they connected me with a trusted influencer, a mentor. And basically this person told me, you have the potential, you can do these, here are the opportunities. And so I remember they basically held my hand throughout the entire college application process. Together as an organization, we went on college tours. I remember visiting NC State University. I remember just meeting some of the college students from NC State, from Mi Familia. So I already felt like I was part of their family before I even went to college, because like Flor, I also attended NC State University. And so it was through El Pueblo and the connections that I have with that mentor that helped me kind of see what was beyond high school, that it wasn't just graduating and going into work, because that was, for my parents, that is what success was. The educational success is you graduate, you go to work. Entonces, I had the opportunity to, so I applied to NC State. It was the only school that I applied to, and I got admitted. But I'll be honest, at first, I was denied admission to NC State. But when I went on a college tour after I applied, I met someone who would change my life forever. It was somebody at NC State who advocated for me and who rooted for me. And I'll say that about a week or 2 weeks later, I got another letter saying that I was admitted into the transition program at NC State. So it was just very, that's what I'm saying. It was so unexpected that I went to college. And so, these trusted influencers that God put in my way just really helped guide me towards that path, because I was a high school student who didn't really know how to apply. I didn't even really know what was beyond high school. So I did that. So anyway, I went to NC State, and while my time at NC State University, I had the opportunity to connect with a dropout prevention program, Juntos. So I worked with Juntos throughout most of my college years. And in Juntos, I had the opportunity to work with families and students that were Spanish speakers, that were Latino, Latinas. And so I worked with them. And when I graduated, I had the opportunity to work with the North Carolina Society of Hispanic Professionals as a graduation coach. And so it was with Juntos and the North Carolina Society of Hispanic Professionals that my journey in college access and education really began. And it's where I realized that that was where my true passion was. Porque I'll be honest, I went to NC State and I graduated with a degree in criminology and forensic science, porque I thought I was going to be working with dead bodies and doing criminal investigations, but that didn't work out. So my true passion was working with families and students and helping them navigate the educational system, helping them navigate college access and just that process. And as I worked with the families and the students, I saw myself and those students. When I was a high school student, I remember feeling invisible, powerless, voiceless. I just felt inferior than other students. And I just felt like I wasn't smart enough. When I went to a college tour at NC State, I remember going to D.H. Hill Library and seeing, just a lot of students, but none of the students looked like me. And so I felt like, oh man, like I'm not smart enough to be here. I'm not smart enough to go to NC State. Like I'm not as smart as my peers. I always felt that. So I just remember when I was in high school, that's how I felt. So when I was working at the high school with these students, they had ellos se sentían igual, like they felt the same as I did. And so I could relate to them and saw myself in them. And so, I decided, I was like, I want to be that person that El Pueblo was for me, that Amanda was for me, that Salome was for me. And all those trusted influencers that impacted my journey and my life. I want to be a trusted influencer for these students, and I want to help them and their families reach their goals and just know like what are the opportunities and the options, porque muchas veces we don't know what the options are. And so if we don't know, like how do we know to prepare for something that we don't know what's out there, right? And so so for now, I think I will have like over 10 years of working with families and students and helping them graduate from high school, navigate the educational system, post-secondary and K-12. And so I really have enjoyed creating those spaces for students to learn, but also I have really enjoyed working with educators because I realize that we can't do the work alone, right? So we need a lot of trusted influencers across the state of North Carolina. So I've made it kind of my goal to connect with trusted influencers across the state so that together we can help students that need our support. But yeah, and here I am today working with CFNC and just working with families and students at a much greater capacity, helping them with planning, applying, and paying for college, and also working with the educators, which I really have enjoyed doing.
I love that, Juana. It's such a full circle story when you talk about organizations that we all collaborate with now, right? El Pueblo, Juntos, the Society of Hispanic Professionals, and to see that you're a product of so many of those. It really does take a village. And so if folks like Mike are listening or watch this on replay, like know your impact. I would love to just have a Zoom call with all the kids that Mike has impacted over the years, because he has had a tremendous influence on so many folks' lives here through El Pueblo. So thanks for all the work that y'all are doing. And what a perfect person to be doing college access work now through CFNC. So I know you've helped a number of our students, Juana, and students across North Carolina. So you are that person now. So really appreciate all the work that you're doing out in the field across North Carolina. We'll have a series of questions I'd love to ask y'all, because, I want to make sure that we're maximizing this time with two folks who are on the ground doing this work every day and has really intimate knowledge of this process, as well as our community. I wanted to start with a question around sort of this moment that we find ourselves in, right? There's been a national conversation around student debt and how that's really impacting students, especially students of color and working class and low income students. We've been having a conversation around COVID and online learning, and just folks are pretty tired of this sort of the Zoom life, if we're all being honest, right? Especially students. And so there's a question I often hear, especially from young people and families, around, is college still worth it? And I'm curious how y'all think about this question around what are the reasons you see to go to college right now?
Mhm. Yeah, Ricky. So I totally can relate to that. I'm hearing it from students in Wilson as well. And some of the reasons that Casa Azul likes to tell as to, is it worth it to go to college? And some of those reasons are to gain new skills, for them not to be afraid to take classes. Because the thing is that there's this pressure that you should know what you want to study and that you should know what you should do after high school. But the opportunity to gain new skills and to explore different career paths is what college can provide. And so you don't necessarily have to take classes that are part of your major. You can explore that in the first 2 years. Another reason is to find your purpose. By exploring these different avenues, then you can finally either cancel some of those some of those options from your list, and then move into something that you do really like. And so it's a learning process, and you get more confident. You trust your voice more as you get closer and closer to finding your purpose. One of the reasons that I really like to advocate for college is to see the world. Like, again, I studied abroad and I wish I would have done more of it, but I think that it's an opportunity for students to get that independence, to get that global mindset that is so necessary in today's time, and explore and meet new people and networking and all of that. And to all of this also will hopefully eventually get people to break out of their shell. And it's like this bridge between your childhood and your adulthood. All of these things that I've talked about thus far, it's like the opportunity for students to reflect on the person that they were, that they want to be, and how to work towards that. And all of this also, again, to get a career and earn more money. College graduates have more earning potential on average than students that only have a high school diploma. And also it creates that mobility for promotions and stuff that maybe you wouldn't have if you just have a high school diploma. And one of my biggest advice for high school students that are considering college is to get involved in many organizations. As Juana just mentioned, all of these organizations is an opportunity for students to learn about what their passions are, to meet people and network and find community and with people that have similar interests, and also develop their leadership skills, their teamwork skills. And so all of these things you get from going to college.
Yeah, and I'll add, definitely agree 100% with Flor. All of that is very important. I'm a huge supporter of just college access, or just going to college. And so I think that there's a misconception that college means 4-year school, like a university, right? We'll be talking a little bit of what are those opportunities, what are those options, but there's this misconception that ir al colegio means go to a university, and that's not necessarily true. I think we need to realize that there's a lot of different pathways that students can take, and as they're exploring, like what is it that they want to do after high school. But just to add on to what Flor is saying is, we got to think about college is definitely important, because with your education and with your experience, that gives you credibility, right? And so it's easier for you to move up and in a work in your career. It's going to open up doors, it's going to open opportunities for you. Another thing also is you get to have a career where you can take vacation. You can take 3 weeks vacation and go to Europe. You can go take a month. You can, if your baby's sick, or if you're not feeling well, or you need to attend to family member, you can take sick leave. And because I've heard students say, bueno, I can go work, puedo trabajar en la construcción, o puedo trabajar con mi tío, mi tía, and I'm making more money, I'm making good money, but is it providing you the quality of life that you want to have in the future, right? And so again, thinking about retirement, is your employment contributing towards your retirement? Are you investing in your future? So all of that, we have to think about the long term. And so what kind of quality of life is having an education plus experience going to provide you? And so there's going to be so many opportunities, so many doors are going to open. And personally, I can say that because I have education, so many doors have opened for me. And if I only had a high school diploma, I wouldn't be sitting here, talking to you now. So I think that we need to think about just understand what are those opportunities after high school, but also just knowing that college is worth it. Like, it's still worth it. And I do understand that muchos jóvenes, like, they're in debt. And a lot of times it's because they start late with the planning, and they really don't have like that a trusted influencer or a mentor that's guiding them through the process. So they're doing it by themselves. And so a lot of times because of that, they're borrowing more money than what they should be, or they're not connecting with the right resources, financial resources. So they're getting in more debt. But I definitely understand where students might be coming from, and I have heard that a lot. But my message here is that it definitely is worth it, and connect with someone that can help you and explore all of the options that are available for students.
Yeah, not only is it worth it, right? There, like you said, there's multiple avenues and what different pathways you can take. And we're not just talking about a 4-year degree here, because so many of the most lucrative options, if we're talking strictly dollars and cents, are community college at this point. So many jobs across North Carolina that need to be filled. And you can do a short course at a community college or your 2-year associates and be making more than some of us are making now, Like, I went and visited my local community college last year, and to learn of some of the engineering programs, some of the biotech programs that they have, and sort of the immediate placement because of huge demand that exists for these jobs. You're making pretty good money, 50 to 70K right out of high school, right out of community college program, which is, a pretty good salary to start off that young. So definitely encourage folks to think about what those different options are: community college, for university, or even dual enrollment programs, as you get a head start with your community college while you're still in high school with early colleges, or through your local or through programming that allows you to take dual enrollment classes in both institutions. Well, I'm glad you helped to sort of pinpoint the why, right? And I completely agree with y'all. The why still exists. It is still very much worth it, even if you're just looking at the money part of it, right? I mean, Flor did a great job of providing all the other reasons as well that are just as important. I'm curious about the how, though. Like, I want to talk a little bit about, we get a lot of questions in an organization, I know y'all do too, around the actual process, right? So, like, if you're talking to students and parents right now, for those that are listening, what advice do you have for them around what do they need to know about the college application process?
Sure, and I can get started with that question. So there's 3 big steps that all families and all students need to follow or consider when planning, when wanting to go to college, and that's plan, apply, and pay, right? And so when we think about planning, we're thinking about starting early. And it's never too early to start planning, right? Like, I just had my daughter and I'm already planning for her college by opening a college savings account for her, right? Because I want to instill that idea of, you can go to college, you can go wherever you want. And I am preparing her, like, mentally, like, I want her to have that mindset, but also financially. So it's never too early to start that planning process or starting those conversations. But also planning is also part of just knowing what is it that you're looking for? Like, what are your career interests? So exploring those career opportunities. What is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? So taking some, as a family, maybe doing some assessments together, like career interest inventories or personality and assessments. And so learning about yourself, also taking the time to explore your options. One of the things that I wish that I would have done as a high school student is toured and explored different universities and different campuses. And so I always encourage families to together visit the schools. If your student is interested in going to a school near the beach, go like make it a family trip and go together. Or maybe in the mountains, make it a family trip, go together, schedule a tour. There are individuals at these universities that are scheduling tours, working with families and students to help them kind of, see the campus, look at the opportunities. Also, students need to look and see like what university is going to fit my needs, right? A lot of times we don't think about what our needs are, what our interests are, what is it that we need. We're always thinking about what is the school that's closest to me? What is the school that's right here next to me, or like the most affordable school? But we also have to think about what schools are meeting my needs. What is it that I'm looking for in a school? Do I want to go to a small school? Do I want to go to a big school? So all of that is important as part of the planning process. And also connecting with your mentors, with your school counselors, making sure that you're taking those college entrance exams. Make sure that you're taking that foreign language course, especially if you want to go to a four-year school. A lot of students don't go to four-year schools because they forget to take that foreign language course in high school. And so then they have to do the transfer program. But you have to make sure that you're planning and you're preparing and that you're working with your counselor, attend community fairs, attend those programs that your counselors and your community leaders are putting together for you. So once you get through the planning steps, and then you apply, right? So you have to apply to colleges, and you want to start early with that. And you also want to apply for financial aid because you have to figure out, how am I going to pay for it? So applying to the FAFSA, applying to scholarships, looking into fellowships. Do you want to do an apprenticeship? And if doing an apprenticeship is something you want to do, you have to start in your 11th grade of high school to start planning that. And an apprenticeship is basically where you work and your employer pays for you to go to college. And so you're getting that education and that experience. So those are the three steps that I always encourage students, like planning, applying, and paying. And so one of the other things that I want to talk about really quickly is RDS is another step in applying. You want to make sure that you're applying to the Residency Determination Service, so that you can see if you're eligible for in-state tuition and if you're eligible for state aid. So there's so much, Ricky, like there's so much that I can talk about, and I can do like a whole lecture on this, a whole section on this, but I know our time is limited. But the biggest message that I can really give students and families is connect with someone that can support you, guide you through this process, because it is a lot. It is a lot, and just inform yourself, connect, and ask questions. At CFNC, we have our website. It's in Spanish, and for families that may want the information in Spanish. So we have a lot of great information there, but there's nothing like connecting with that one person that can guide you through the process.
Yeah. Wow. Juana, that was I love your 3-step process to walk us all through. It's like you do this every day or something. So but that's really helpful. Flor, I wonder if you have anything to add to this question.
No, I just wanted to also highlight LatinxEd and College y Consejos. I mean, I wish that this would have existed when I was growing up, but I think that there is a lot more out there now than ever before. So, and with Casa Azul, we might not have all the answers, but we sure do have a network that we can reach out to, and other organizations that Juana has mentioned. So I think that los jóvenes de hoy can just, like what Juana just said, is ask questions and reach out and connect, so that they don't have to go through this alone.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks for the shout out there with College y Consejos. We have a great team at LatinxEd with coaches that are really helping students navigate the process. And I think that's, for folks watching, that's like a really important component to this work, whereas we're still building the capacity needed to serve the Latinx community properly in North Carolina. And it truly takes a village. And so all of us are partnering and working together to figure out how do we make sure that all these questions are answered and families feel supported. And so we have an incredible resource with Juana at CFNC. We've partnered together with College y Consejos to do events. I know she's partnered with practically every organization in North Carolina to host some sort of FAFSA event or college advising event. And with y'all as well, we're starting up in Wilson and supporting your work, Flor. And so, yeah, that's a really good point. I think something that's really important to keep in mind as we move forward.
Yeah, and if I may add, Ricky, I really want to encourage parents to be involved in the process with the students, and for the students to involve their parents. I think it's just so important that both the student and the parent play a role in that process. I'll share a little bit. When I was in high school, I mentioned that we never talked about higher education. And so when I went to college, my parents were a little upset that I was going to college. And it was mainly because they were confused. They didn't really know like why I wanted to go to college and why I wanted to live on campus and why I wanted to leave the house. And so there was a lot of confusion and there was a lot of feelings, and there was just a lot of disappointment. I feel like that's how my parents felt, just disappointed because they didn't understand. And they really didn't know how to support me. And so I always tell students, like, involve your parents, talk to your parents about your plans, take them to that college or university that you're thinking about going to, so that transition is easier for both parties.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's such a good point. Like, and that's something we learned really early, is that parents have to be a part of this process, or else it just gets more difficult year after year, especially as you're making those tough decisions that are much more than just about your education. It's about your entire future, right? And where you study does have a big impact in terms of what that pathway looks like going forward. I want to transition here with a question that I think is a question that comes up practically every week for us with college access work. And I know it does for y'all too, given the growth of the Latino community across North Carolina. But it's around the topic of immigrant families and immigrant statuses and how that impacts people's pathway to college. I had a really quick question for you, Juana. This is actually pure curiosity because I actually don't know the answer to this. But when it comes to 529 savings accounts, do you know if certain families are disqualified depending on immigration status and whether they can open one of those accounts for their kids?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for asking that. That's a great question, Ricky. So NC 529 is a college savings account. And so a lot of states have savings accounts. So here in North Carolina is the NC 529 plan. And so to be eligible for an account, you basically have to be 18, just be 18, have a social security number, or have an ITIN number. And so as long as you have either one of those identification numbers and you're 18, you can open an account for anyone. And so that is definitely we're trying to push that idea in our community to start saving and planning early for college. And I know my colleague Juana has been working with some nonprofits, and they are using an NC 529 to provide scholarship for students for education. And so it's definitely a great opportunity and great way to start that process to plan and pay for college.
No, that's great. Thanks. That's really helpful to hear around the eligibility criteria there. And I'm sure people will be more interested in that. Thinking about the issue of immigration status more broadly, I'm curious if we could zoom in here in Wilson, Flor, and get your take on this issue. Are you seeing still a lot of students that are undocumented or that have DACA? Is this a conversation that's happening in the community?
So yes, we've had a few students that have already graduated in 2021, and they didn't have a plan for this school year, and they're DACAmented. And the reason they're in this place is because they thought they had no options. They thought that because they were DACAmented, it was just too unrealistic to attain post-secondary, college or university education. And another thing that we are seeing a lot are like mixed status families. Like maybe the students are US citizens, but maybe their parents are undocumented. And so that is a specific situation that many counselors don't know about. I don't think they know how to deal with these type of situations. And that's why it's super important for students to reach the right resources that do know how to handle these situations. And I want to talk a little bit more about a personal experience that I have. For example, in 2009, when we graduated, my husband was top in his class, and he didn't know he was undocumented until 12th grade, when he realized he would not be able to move on to further his education. And this kind of topic, I mean, maybe now it's more on students' radar, but before it was like, this is goes over our head, and it's overwhelming, really. So maybe we avoid it subconsciously, but I just want to reiterate que ahorita que sí hay opciones, and that I know like College y Consejos has a lot of resources for undocumented students and DACAmented students. So that goes like to say that it's not going to be easy, like not like, oh, all our problems are solved. I mean, it's going to be hard, but like nothing worth having comes easy. So we have to reach out to the right people and understand that, this trajectory, our professional and personal trajectory isn't linear. So maybe we don't have all the answers now, but we have to like bounce back and forth to the right resources and get to those answers that we so desperately need.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for sharing all that, Flor, and for sharing your own family story around this, how challenging navigating this really complicated process can be. Juana, you see this every day in your work. Do you want to talk more about on the option side of stuff? Like, what options do exist if you're advising a DACA or undocumented student? What does that conversation sound like for you?
No, absolutely, Ricky. And I also want to mention that there are a lot of immigrant statuses that we oftentimes don't think about. Like there are students here that are on certain visas. There are students here who recently I've worked with U.S. citizen students who recently migrated back to the U.S. So some students, they leave early when they're babies to their countries. And once they're older, their parents send them back to the United States so that they can finish school and then potentially have more opportunities. And so I've been working with several of those cases where students are here, unaccompanied youth that are having a very difficult time navigating the system, but also, again, recognizing that there are a variety of immigrant statuses or non-US citizens that are in the United States that are wanting or trying to navigate this process. And so the first thing I want to say is that there is no law prohibiting students, regardless of their status, of DACA and documented students from attending a college or university here in North Carolina, right? So they can go to any college or university as long as they are meeting the requirements for that institution. And so this is why the planning aspect of college is so important, and connecting with a trusted influencer that can help you navigate that process. It's so important because it's already a lot for students that, whose parents went to college and now they're going to college. It's a lot for them as well, but it's even more challenging to navigate that process for our immigrant students. And so some of the options that I always try to encourage students, especially for DACA and documented or other non-US citizen students who are in high school, is take advantage of those dual enrollment programs. Because let me go back a little bit. But if you're DACA undocumented, or if you have a certain immigration status or visa, you're not going to be eligible for in-state tuition. So you're going to pay double, triple what the cost is. And this is what's stopping students from even wanting to pursue higher education and wanting to go to college. Another barrier challenge is, they're having to pay that, they're not eligible for financial aid, federal or state aid here in North Carolina. And so if you know that, then to look for scholarships, to look for other funding options early. And so you want to make sure that you're planning, that you're working with a trusted influencer to help you. So one of the things that I like to talk to students about in college, in high school, to help them minimize the overall cost, is to take advantage of dual enrollment. programs in their schools through Career and College Promise, where they're able to take college courses at no cost, either at a four-year school or at a community college. So really take advantage of that, taking AP classes and any opportunity that they can to take those free college courses, do it. Do it, because once you graduate, you're going to be paying for everything, or they're going to charge you for everything. And also the community college system, they're very unique in that they offer some opportunity, like a lot of different opportunities for students outside of just educational opportunities. So they have seven exceptions. And so one of those exceptions that we have helped students with a lot is the employer sponsorship. So if you're DACA and you're working with an employer, that employer can actually sponsor you to go to college, and that employer is charged the in-state rate versus the out-of-state rate. And so it makes it a lot more accessible for students to attend a community college in North Carolina. And so if you're working with an employer, talk to that employer about your plans. Even when you go and interview with that employer, like, what are you providing me, if I'm coming to work for you? Because a lot of times we're thinking, oh, like, I'm coming to work for you, I'm doing you a favor. No, I'm coming to work for you. So what are you, like, what is it in there for me? And so asking those questions, how do you support students that want to go to college? Also for
Oh no. She was on fire there.
We couldn't handle her information.
We
too
really
much.
couldn't, right? But she was dropping a ton of knowledge around the different options. And employee sponsorship is something we've seen a lot of DACA students take advantage of when it comes to taking advantage of an opportunity and working with your employer to make sure you gain the skills necessary to continue fulfilling those jobs. And so I'm sure Juana will join us again shortly. But Flor, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the next question here, our final question around some of the work that y'all are doing with Casa Azul, the Wilson, and also work with educators. And so what do you think educators can play a bigger role in this? We've been talking about college advising, and we've been talking a lot about the pathway in general. But do you think educators can and should play a bigger role in this conversation?
Yes, and when I think of educators, I think of like the teachers, but I also think of the administrators and the Board of Education and everyone that works within the school system. And something that Juana mentioned earlier was that students need their hand held. And I know that seems kind of like overwhelming, but that's the reality, that educators have to meet students where they're at. So a lot of our Latinx students are more than likely the first in their families to go through this process. Like Juana said, my parents as well only have a third grade education. So I was the very first person going through this process, and it's overwhelming. So right now, what we're seeing with the youth in Wilson, when it comes to the personal essay, they get blocked. They've never had something like this before. And even the tiniest ask, a personal essay, talking highly of yourself, seems an inconceivable task. And I feel like educators should also think about this, that maybe it's a practice to put in place sooner rather than later, for us to learn how to be kind to ourselves and say great things about ourselves and know how to be storytellers of our own stories. So, yeah, I think that's really important for educators to think about meeting students where they're at, and how to develop them as they grow in their high school careers. And another thing that we see in Wilson, and I wish for Wilson, is language justice. The schools have to recognize that, a one size fits all resources does not work, and our community needs resources in their language. It's no longer sufficient to have interpreters. It should be catered specifically to the audience. So therefore, resources should be in Spanish. This whole process, like Juana was saying, is super difficult for someone that's a second generation, or that speaks the language. So imagínate adding that extra layer of language inequity. And then also adding another layer, like sometimes literacy inequity or the tech barriers. Not everybody has a computer, not everybody has access to the internet. So when things are held via Zoom, that put our community at a even greater disadvantage. Another thing that I think is super important for educators to consider is culturally affirming spaces and resources. Our students get to 12th grade and they don't know what they want to study. They don't know what options there are. They don't even know much about their heritage, their culture, and who they are. So all of those existential questions just add to the pressure, add to the stress. And if we had these spaces earlier on, maybe we would be more empowered. Maybe we would be more confident in our voice and more curious and inquisitive. So I think that having that sense of who you are and knowing who you are is good for our students, and we need that.
Yeah.
Another thing that educators need to think about is the representation and lack thereof, really, what that does to a student. And also, like, students can't be what they can't see. We don't see ourselves represented in so many places, in schools and in our daily lives, like in the doctors or our elected officials. That lack of representation does a lot to a student as far as like conceiving a higher or bigger or a dream for themselves. So in Wilson, our students are 20% of the population, but they see themselves represented less than 1% of the time, less than 1%. So educators need to be thinking of this like sustainable pipeline that would be maybe to create, what are the barriers that I guess make it difficult for students to become teachers, to become educators. So on a program that I always think about is Teaching for America, how it would pay for your tuition and you would have to be a teacher for a few years. And that seems like a very organic and sustainable thing to think about when trying to create the diversity of educators. And lastly, Casa Azul, we've been super active in our Board of Education meetings, and we think it's super important to hold our elected officials accountable. And we are super supportive of public input, and it's our right to show up and to speak up when our needs aren't being met. Is the only way that we can create change. And educators in and of itself, they should welcome this public input. They should understand that and center the work. The work is who, why are they here? Why are we here? We're here for the students, right? And so if we center them and understand that, you know, there's work to be done, then there wouldn't be this like complacency or this defensiveness or, you know, lack of acknowledging that the system could do better. We can always do better. So welcoming that input, I think is super important for educators.
No, and I'm so glad that y'all are showing up to things like the Board of Education meetings, because that's not always the first place we see our community, but I think it should be. They're making really important decisions for everyone when it comes to creating culturally affirming environments, language access questions, all these things, right? So yeah, getting educators and administrators involved in this bigger conversation around how we make sure our students succeed is so important. And so yeah, I appreciate you sharing the good work that is going on with Casa Azul and out in Wilson County. Juan, I want to toss it back over to you. You were on fire and you left us. No worries though. Want to give you a chance to jump into this conversation. I mean, this question, but also add anything else you wanted to add that you may have not shared with us around the options for DACA students.
Yeah, no, Rick, I'm telling you, it's Friday and all the technology and the computers, they know I'm doing too much on a Friday. But, yeah, I was really on the roll with that options for DACA students. I was talking about the sponsorships. There are different sponsorships at the community colleges that students can benefit from, like the employer sponsorship. There's also a nonprofit sponsorship. There's a high school graduate sponsorship. And so there's a lot of different options and opportunities that are unique to certain students. And so connecting with someone at the community college or somebody at your high school to talk through those options will be important, even for educators, right? I think it's important for educators to understand and to familiarize themselves with those unique opportunities for students at the community college, but also at the four-year institutions. What are colleges doing to support DACA, undocumented, and other non-US citizen students? And so, and that's one of the things that they can do, making sure that they are informing themselves, connecting with individuals in the community, reaching out to their local schools and asking them, what kind of scholarship opportunities do you offer for DACA, undocumented, and non-US citizen students, and sharing that information with their students at the schools. Because a lot of students don't know this, but there are four-year institutions, public institutions, that offer full ride scholarships to DACA undocumented students. And so they can benefit from those scholarships. And so, pero una cosa así, and that's what I tell students, like, you have to work so much more harder than other students, because you have to be so much more competitive for these scholarships. Like, you just have to be competitive. You have to work hard. You have to you just gotta, overdo it when it comes to your academics, to your leadership. And so they have to work a lot harder to meet, to achieve their goals. But there are definitely options. There's also a lot of scholarships that are available locally. There are some local organizations within their community. So like, look and see, like, what is your community offering, and what kind of scholarship opportunities are they offering? What is being offered at the state level? What is being offered nationally, right? There's the Dream US. There is the Golden Door Scholarship, for example. And also, like, what is being offered at the institutions. A lot of students don't know that higher education institutions offer scholarships specifically for DACA or undocumented students. And so knowing those options and again, the planning piece, that's why it's so important that you take the time and that you can connect with someone that can help you. And for educators, again, like, helping them through that process and connecting them with scholarship resources is another thing that they can do to support the students, or even advocating for those scholarship opportunities from their community. And so some other things that educators can do is connecting with local organizations, right? I think that when there's an organization like Casa Azul that's already connected with the community, go ahead and connect with them and see what you all can do to collaborate. And, Casa Azul already has a connection, a relationship, and you may not have that connection or relationship as a school employee. Well, why don't you connect with that organization and do something together, like host an event, help them fill out FAFSA, RDS, create a space where you can help them navigate these processes. Advocating for your students, right? A lot of times, like Flor was saying, right, a lot of times our students feel like, como que, I forget exactly the words that you use for, but I just feel like sometimes our students feel like they're not like capable enough, right? Like they don't have that potential. But in reality, like, it's so hard for us to talk about ourselves and to look at our strengths and look at our what we bring to the table and that talent. So as an educator, highlight those talents, highlight those skills to that student. Like, just take the time and help them identify their strengths. Because a lot of times it's really hard to do that as a student. And again, take the time to learn about those policies at the local, state, national level. How is it affecting students, and how can you help them navigate those processes? Because there is a way, right? There is a way. And so we just have to learn about them so that we're able to help the students navigate the processes. And at CFNC, we have so many resources through our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel for educators who are helping Hispanic Latinx students in North Carolina navigate the educational system. So we have a YouTube channel targeted for educators, community partners, and college access professionals. And we also have a YouTube channel or playlist for Spanish-speaking families where we help them navigate the different processes. So look and see, like, what resources have already been created. Take the time to sit in those, trainings, to listen to that video, and I would also say that if you don't know the process, don't just send the student to Juana or College y Consejos or Juanes or Ricky. Like, don't just say, okay, well, let me refer you to so-and-so. Like, I always encourage educators to sit down with the student, and together, the three of us, we can go through the process together. Because if you can help the student successfully navigate the process, then you'll be able and you'll feel more comfortable helping other students. So be part of become part of that process. Don't be afraid to help that student. Because a veces, like, we're afraid to help because we don't want to mess up. But there's support out there. There's a lot of resources out there. And we need to believe as educators, and we need to believe in students and look at the skills and the talents that they bring to different spaces, to our schools, and just support them as much as we can, and connect with individuals as much as we can.
Absolutely. No, that's really, really solid advice there. Appreciate all that, Juana. I know we could talk all day about this, right? It's clear that we really believe in the work that needs to be done, and it's inspiring to see and hear leaders like y'all just really paving the way on how we do that effectively. I want to give folks a chance that are online or that may watch this later an opportunity to sort of know how to get in touch with you. Y'all are clearly a wealth of knowledge, and there's so much more to talk about. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but Flor, if there's someone in Eastern North Carolina or Wilson that is like, oh, I want to connect with Flor and continue learning more about Casa Azul and just all her dresses that she made for famous people, how do they find you? Like, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, right now the best way to reach us, Casa Azul, is through Facebook. So a message on Messenger or through Instagram, a DM. You can also shoot us an email, which is just flor.casazuldewilson@gmail.com. Super easy to remember, but yeah, definitely get in touch through Facebook, through Instagram. Is the best way.
Very cool, very cool. And what about you, Juana, for the rest of North Carolina, if they're not in Eastern North Carolina? But yeah, of course, if they have questions about college advising or just want to follow up with any information you've shared, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they are more than welcome to reach me via my email, juana.hernandez/lira@cfi.org. I also want to let everyone know that CFNC does have a call center, and they do offer interpret or translation services, and we do have some bilingual staff on board. If they request it, they can speak to a Spanish speaker. And so if they need like immediate support, or they just need help with anything, planning, applying, paying for college, any information that's on the website, then it's easier or quicker for them to call our CFNC call center number, or even reach out to them. And I'll include that in the chat once we get out. I've also have Facebook, Instagram. I know that someone was asking about like those forgivable education loans, and we do have information on the FELS, the forgivable education loans for service, on CFNC, where you can learn more about the application process, which degrees are eligible for those loans. And we have a list of North Carolina and national scholarships on there. So definitely take the time to visit our website. And then, but again, I just want to remind everyone that there are so many other resources available across the state of North Carolina, like LatinxEd and College y Consejos, Casa Azul de Wilson, and see what's in your local community.
Great. Well, a packed conversation. Not shocked at all talking to these two. I hope you follow up with them, learn more about their individual work, but also to really spark your curiosity around either your own college journey or someone in your life. There's someone somewhere that's thinking about college, and as you heard it here, still very much worth it. Encourage you to seek out these resources and really begin to use that 3-step plan that Juana did so well in describing. Plan, apply, and then figure out how to pay for it. And so thank you both so much for your time. excited to see what's next. And yeah, seek us out if you need us. Thanks so much, y'all, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Adios.